Coffee with the Editor is proudly brought to you by IRZ and the Naledi Group of companies, which includes Naledi Ring Rollers, Composite Brake Components, and Naledi Foundries. Thank you for joining me for Coffee with the Editor. Vesconite Bearings, can you just introduce us to the company for those who don't know?
The company is based, the manufacturing is based in the Free State, South Africa. The company is 60 years old. It started with engine reconditioning and hard chroming, so it's always had a specialty in bearing applications. About 50 years ago, we developed our own proprietary polymer range of low friction, long wear life bearing materials that were designed to be used without greasing and still give a long bearing life. So typically replacing bronze, which is a traditional bearing material, and also steel. So in the railways industry, we have probably for about 40 years been replacing steel components, particularly in bogies. Although there are other applications, but the major applications have been bogies, typically centre ball liners and pedestal liners for axles.
The production facility that you have in the Free State is 20,000 square metres under roof, which is quite significant when we as a country are looking for local manufacturing and local content. Tell us about that facility.
We compound our materials, which is sort of formulates the plastics, and we injection mold and extrude. So that's where our materials start, and then we have a machine shop, which we're quite proud of. We have over 70 CNC machines currently. That includes CNC machines of really great capability in terms of the axes they have and the angles that they can work to. So quite an impressive facility, and we like to think one of the biggest machine shops of this type in the Southern Hemisphere. Is that correct?
And then you would have your own laboratory and testing.
Yes, so along with our compounding, the injection molding, the extrusion, the machining, there are many quality checks along in the process. The checking room might check the tolerances according to our customers' drawings, and we can work to very tight tolerances. And this is very important, especially when the performance of a customer's pump, for instance, depends highly on whether they have got good tolerances or not. So the efficiency of the pump, for instance, might be affected by it. Railways has a little bit more leeway in this sense, but when it comes to prototyping new designs, we really try to eke out performance gains, make it a proper, designed as a bearing, just to ensure that the bearing lasts longer, because as dirt gets in, it's more robust in terms of adapting to extreme temperatures, and we want the bearing to perform.
Certification and accreditation for your products within the sector.
We have 9001 approval, and in the railway industry we are pursuing AAR certification for the United States, and in the UK this is actually UK and Europe, we are in the process of proving certification that we meet the standards.
Various certifications that we have, especially for quality. In the UK, we are now busy working with RSSB to get our products approved. There are different types of certification for different types of products. And it also depends on the type of rolling stock how old the rolling stock is. So older rolling stock need a different type of certifications, and the certification isn't that important with them. But with the newer rolling stock, you have to get certain specifications and approvals. So we are busy working on that as well.
So, Zané, tell me about the products that you have for the rail sector.
So we have products that we supply to various industries, and specifically to the railway sector. We have specialized products in the railway sector. So one of that products, for instance, is the cup liner. This is just a small model as a representation. So the cup liner comes on basically the bogie sits on the cup liner, and then it reduces the rotational resistance, and that in turn reduces the wear that you get on your wheels as well as on the track. We also have couplers that reduces the wear on the mating surfaces. On our passenger trains we have the side bearers, and then we also have the pedestal liners that comes again the representation model. So this comes on our diesel and electric locomotives, and that is basically an axle box guide. So there is a lot of movement that happens on the surface, and the very nice thing about our products, with all the products, is that it is self-lubricating, meaning less maintenance. It also have very low friction, and that low friction in turn implies that we have less wear on the mating surfaces, and then also less wear, like I mentioned, on your rails and wheels. So for our customers, it is very important to us to not just reduce the maintenance that they have to do, but also to reduce the long-term cost they have, not just in the specific application, but in the whole, like a bigger picture that we actually have. One of our newer products, we have Superlube, which is a product that was manufactured in 2013, and we actually used it on the Sishen-Saldanha line. This is a load pad, which Thomas is going to elaborate on.
So Thomas, that comes out of a locomotive?
That's correct.
From the Sishen-Saldanha line?
Yes.
Been in test for 2 years. In
That's
test
correct.
or in operation?
In operation.
In operation.
Yes.
Okay, and I believe that it's done the job.
It has. If you look at it carefully, you can see that there's still the machining marks quite visible. So the wear on this load pad has been surprisingly little. So we are very impressed. And
Where does that go?
where does it go?
Yes.
So this is on the 15E locomotive bogie. The bogie has a vertical sleeve as the pivot point, and there are 4 of these pads distributed around that pivot point, and the full weight of the locomotive bears on these pads. And the pads have to be very low friction, because with that extraordinary weight, you can imagine to rotate that bogie is quite a lot of force involved.
And why would you need that smooth rotation?
You need the bogie to rotate freely underneath the locomotive in order for the bogie to track correctly. On the Sishen-Saldanha line, there are passing loops, because it's a single track. So when trains need to pass, there's a loop for one to sit in while the other passes, and the passing loops are all on one side. And the implications of that are that the bogie is always rotating to one side, and when it comes out of the passing loop onto the straight, the bogie typically remained at a slightly slewed angle, very tiny angle, but not 100% straight. And the implications of that were higher friction, which increases your wear on your wheels, quite an expensive thing if you consider the price of a wheel.
And then obviously damage to the track.
Damage to the track as well, and higher energy costs, because if every single bogie in your
300 plus.
well, yeah, so this is the locomotive.
Oh yes,
yeah.
the locomotive.
consider the amount of friction that's added by a slight angle change, it's significant. So the engineers who originally designed the bogie for the 15E, they did a lot of testing when they started encountering these problems, and they requested a lower friction material from us. So this material was developed specifically for that application, and we were able to help them, along with some other changes they made, I understand, but this was a significant portion of those changes. They were able to double their wheel life.
Wow.
So that's a significant cost saving. So we typically use that as a basis for selling our product. You know, it's more than just protecting the mating surfaces. It really has implications on the asset lifecycle costs that a freight provider might have.
And that's from the actual locomotive, the bogie, to the track and the wheels.
Yes.
So, I mean,
and this could apply for wagons as well.
Yeah. So how often do you need to change that? And I know in this instance it's been in for 2 years, but I mean, how often would they have to change it?
Well, you know, this has experienced very little wear over 2 years, and it may well last far, far longer than that. So it's.
But your recommendation?
We'd recommend that people look at their maintenance cycles. You know, you always want components to line up with other maintenance cycles of other components. So it's not inconceivable that this might be able to last many cycles instead of just one. And that obviously means fewer products sold, but you know, if we're solving wear problems, that's an exciting place to be.
And is there potential, you know, when we talk about the Internet of Things and digitalization, is there potential to put like a little chip in there so when it gets to a certain wear point that it notifies? So just from a predictive maintenance point of view, is there potential for that?
I suppose that's possible. Maybe in different trains. For these locos, typically they lift up the body periodically and do visual inspections on other components. So with ours, you would actually be able to see how this lip was faring. That's designed specifically as a kind of indicator.
So then obviously you've got this for the locomotive, so you would have something quite similar for wagons. And I know wagons carry like a different weight to a locomotive, but it would have the same principles in terms of the bogie interface. 100%.
The principles are very similar, and we've done tests with centerliners like this, with Superlube. The test results are something we are pursuing. We hope that the results are there. We suspect that the wagons may have gotten a little bit lost, but we hope to find them.
Therefore the chip would be really helpful.
Talking more about centerliners and Superlube, we are starting a test in the north of Sweden with a company called LKAB, and they have enormous wheel problems, wheel damage because of the cold, wheel wear, and we sincerely hope that a centerliner in Superlube is going to really help their wheel wear life.
So you've actually, I went onto the website and I see that you've got quite a few pilot sites or test case sites from Australia and surrounds. I mean, how long have they been in test? What different kind of products? Do you want sugar? What different kind of products are involved, and how is that going to stimulate product development going forward?
I'll mention one exciting project. In 2017, we visited an East European railway system, and we had an inquiry about their loco pedestal liners, except their pedestal liners were completely different to anything we'd experienced. But we supplied them with prototype material in our what we call our Harley 20, and they put on test on a number of locos, and we've received our first order just about a month ago. after about over a year of testing, and obviously they saw the improvements because they no longer needed to grease all these pedestal liners, and I'm sure they would have seen the improvement in the life of the wear surfaces. I don't know if they'd have been able to measure the wheel wear in such a short time, but it was very interesting to see how one could have a test leading to a complete change in a system.
What is that life cycle benefit to an operator and to those who are refurbishing and manufacturing or maintaining that rolling stock going forward?
So if you consider the implications of the friction between bogie and locomotive, or bogie and wagon, if you lower that friction, you get the train tracking better on the railway track, and the angle between the wheels and the track is more in alignment, and that reduces the wear on the track and the wheel. You can imagine if you had, for instance, your car wheel at a slightly skew angle, how that would affect it. Same thing on a train, except the whole bogie is slightly slewed. The real reason behind this has to do with dynamic and static friction. So typically your static friction of a material is higher than the dynamic, and that results in kind of jerky motion. If you push anything, it starts moving eventually and sort of jerks forward. With Superlube, you have different characteristics. You have a lower static friction and lower than the dynamic, in fact. And that allows a bogie to really come to center very easily without having to overcome a force that causes it to jerk and possibly overcorrect and be slewed then again at a small angle on the opposite side. So instead of this kind of jerking to find center, there's a smooth action, and that really helps the bogies track correctly and reduce wear. And this might sound like a good story, but why is it such a good story for any railway operator? It is because wear can be so expensive. To replace a wheel set prematurely adds a significant cost onto your balance sheet, and if you have a company with, say, 30,000 wagons, if you start reducing the lifespan of wheels from whatever it is, 2 million kilometers to 1 million, you already got an enormous cost to deal with. So maximizing the life of the wheels and of the tracks for the infrastructure operator, just has huge implications. They can really save a lot of money.
So we really pride ourselves on quality. Therefore, it is very important to us to increase the productivity of the customer and to always also reduce the cost for them. So that is basically our main aim, to really reduce the whole life cycle cost and not just for the specific component and application in which our products are used.
There are also surprising reports that we have back from our customers on savings. For example, we worked for a while with somebody who was involved in putting the Cambodian railways together again after the terrible experiences in Cambodia. And they applied our products on their wagons, and they found that they could run the trains faster than they had before without derailments. So because the wagons were now tracking the track more easily, they weren't having the derailments. Now that's not normally a factor in many customers' thinkings, but there can be extremes like that. But one of the other, perhaps lesser known factors that I think is really important that people should be giving attention to is that if you use low friction materials on your bogies follow the track more easily. By following the track more easily, you need less power to pull that train. And these are very big savings. They're harder to quantify, but no less. That does not mean they're important. They are really very important. So in terms of the overall efficiency of the railways, one should be looking at that, looking at how can we quantify that, and actually taking steps to install products that will allow you to reduce the overall costs and energy used in pulling the train.
So your thoughts on the rail industry, both not just in South Africa, but the rail industry in Africa? Is it an exciting market for you guys right now, or are the constraints still evident?
Well, of course there are constraints, but it's so important. If we can move freight from road to rail, the reduction in carbon emissions is incredible. The damage to our roads is reduced. The safety on the roads is improved. So overall, internationally, there's more and more move to back to freight on rail. And so I feel, we certainly feel it's very important. If we are talking about sustainability in the long term, it really is important to move goods from road onto rail. And we'd like to be very much a part of making those rail systems much more efficient, both in terms of their maintenance, and then of course that less carbon is produced per tonne of goods moved.
Any exciting projects that you guys, apart from what we have discussed, over the next 12 months that you'll be working on?
Well, we really would like to have this Superlube product tested in wagon bogies. We feel for centre bogies on wagons, both in South Africa and everywhere in the world, it really has a very important contribution to make, and we'd like to take that forward.
Is there a particular operator that you want to take that forward with?
So we are planning to start locally with Transnet. We are already discussing with Transnet Richards Bay to test our Superlube on their bogies, and then we, as Thomas mentioned, we already in the process of testing our Superlube on LKAB's bogies that are in Sweden. And then seeing that we are supplying to over 100 countries worldwide, we are very excited to delve into that global market as well. So we are on our way.
We're very excited about these low friction products, and a key factor is that they keep their low friction over constantly. It's not something that disappears. It's not an additive that sort of dries up. So it's a great advantage, and we see these great opportunities for massive savings by railways worldwide, because they will see the savings in their maintenance, they will see the savings in their wheels, they will see the savings in the axle box, the wear to the axle boxes. But not only will they see the savings to their wheels, they should also have quieter operations, less noise, which is a big issue for passenger systems and neighbours next to railways. But then also reduced wear to the rails, and that is a massive and often unrealised how substantial cost that is. So if we can contribute to all those kinds of savings, it will make railways much more competitive than they are today.
Vesconite Bearings, thank you for having coffee with me.
Thank you.